Section 6. Understanding the buyer and seller closing disclosure. A few weeks later, Mark's phone rang. It was the escrow officer. "Good news," she said. "The buyer's loan has been approved and we're getting everything ready for closing." Mark smiled. "That's great. So we're almost done." The escrow officer laughed. "Almost. But before anyone signs documents, there's one more important disclosure the buyer needs to receive." After hanging up, Mark walked into Lisa's office. "I thought we already talked about the loan estimate." "We did," Lisa replied. "But remember, the loan estimate tells the buyer what the loan is expected to look like. The closing disclosure confirms what the loan actually looks like." She placed two documents side by side on her desk. One estimates, the other finalizes. Mark compared the two forms. "They're very similar." "They are," Lisa replied, "and that's intentional. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau designed these forms to make it easier for buyers to compare what they were originally told with the final terms of the loan." Lisa explained that for most residential mortgage transactions covered by TRID, the lender is responsible for ensuring the buyer receives the closing disclosure no later than 3 business days before the buyer signs the loan documents. "This waiting period isn't just another rule," Lisa explained. "It gives buyers time to review the final numbers, ask questions, and make sure they understand exactly what they're agreeing to before completing one of the largest financial transactions of their lives." Mark nodded. "So the buyer shouldn't be seeing these numbers for the first time while sitting at the closing table." Exactly. TRID was designed to eliminate those last-minute surprises. Lisa pointed to several sections of the closing disclosure. The document confirms the final loan amount, interest rate, monthly payment, estimated cash needed to close, loan costs, prepaid expenses, escrow deposits, and other closing costs. It also allows the buyer to compare many of those figures to what appeared on the original loan estimate. Mark looked closer. "So what happens if something changes?" Lisa explained that sometimes legitimate changes occur during the underwriting process. Perhaps the buyer changes loan programs. Maybe the appraisal requires adjustments. Sometimes credits are negotiated after inspections. If certain significant changes occur, the lender may be required to issue a corrected closing disclosure. Depending on the nature of the change, federal law may also require a new 3-business-day review period before the buyer can sign the loan documents. Mark laughed. "So when someone says, 'We'll just close tomorrow,' it isn't always that simple." Lisa smiled. "Exactly. One change can affect everyone involved in the transaction. As real estate professionals, we don't prepare the closing disclosure, but we should understand why it matters. Our role is to communicate with the lender, escrow officer, and our clients, so everyone understands the timeline and no one is surprised by avoidable delays." Mark turned another page. "I noticed the seller has closing documents too." "They do," Lisa replied. "Although the buyer receives the closing disclosure required under TRID, sellers also receive a settlement statement showing the financial details of their side of the transaction." She explained that the seller's closing statement summarizes items such as sales price, existing loan payoffs, real estate commissions, title and escrow fees, prorated property taxes, recording fees, seller credits, net proceeds due to the seller. In a traditional sale, Lisa continued, most sellers are excited to see how much money they'll receive. She paused before looking at Tom's file. But in a short sale, the seller's statement often tells a very different story. Mark understood immediately. Because the lender is accepting less than what's owed. Exactly. In many short sales, the seller receives little or no proceeds because the sale funds are used to satisfy negotiated lender payoffs and approved closing expenses. Lisa reminded Mark that one of the most important responsibilities of an Arizona real estate professional is setting realistic expectations from the beginning. Some sellers assume they'll receive money at closing simply because they're selling their home. Part of our job is helping them understand how the lender's approval, existing liens, commissions, taxes, and closing costs all affect the final settlement. She also reminded him that lenders carefully review which closing costs they are willing to approve during a short sale. Some expenses, commonly paid in a traditional transaction, may require lender approval or may not be approved at all. Never promise a seller that a particular fee will be paid by the lender, Lisa cautioned. Always wait until you receive the lender's written approval letter. Mark nodded. So both the loan estimate and the closing disclosure are really about protecting consumers. They are. They provide transparency, they encourage informed decision-making, and they help everyone understand exactly where the money is going before the transaction is completed. Lisa gathered the closing documents and smiled. Now that you understand the buyer's and seller's closing disclosures, it's time to look at another important question. How does a homeowner actually qualify for a short sale, and what documents does the lender require before making a decision? Key takeaways. The closing disclosure provides buyers with the final terms and costs of their mortgage loan before closing. Buyers generally must receive the closing disclosure at least 3 business days before signing their loan documents. Significant changes to certain loan terms may require corrected disclosures, and in some cases, an additional waiting period. Sellers receive a settlement statement showing the financial details of their side of the transaction. In a short sale, sellers should understand that lender approval determines how sale proceeds and closing costs will be distributed. Online discussion. Question 1. Why is the closing disclosure an important consumer protection document? Answer. The closing disclosure gives buyers an opportunity to review the final loan terms and closing costs before signing loan documents, helping reduce surprises and allowing time to ask questions before completing the transaction. Question 2. Why should a real estate professional avoid promising a seller how much money they will receive from a short sale? Answer. The lender's written approval determines which expenses will be paid and how sale proceeds will be distributed. Until the approval is received, the seller's final proceeds cannot be guaranteed. Question 3. How can understanding the closing disclosure help an Arizona real estate professional better serve their clients? Answer. Understanding the closing disclosure helps agents explain the closing process, coordinate timelines with lenders and escrow officers, manage expectations, and identify issues that could delay closing.